Hey, it's Lucy. Please stay tuned after this episode of Black Velvet Fairies for more information on our podcast and this episode's guests. Thanks.
The paintings were right here, James. I swear. They were right by the bed.
Are you sure? You checked everywhere.
I know where they were. They're hard to miss.
Was anything else missing?
I don't know. I don't think so. There's an envelope of cash from work right next to the bed, and they didn't even touch it.
Was the door unlocked?
No, never. I'm obsessed with locking the door.
Well, it doesn't look like they broke in. I mean, there's not a scratch here.
I know. I don't know what's happening. No shit. Oh, the scarf.
What?
Dude, scarf. I had it in the drawer. Oh, thank God. Oh, it's still here. They didn't find it.
Do you have another key? Like maybe your mom?
No.
We should call the police.
No, I can't deal with that.
Lucy, this is a crime.
Please, James. No police, okay?
Okay. Okay. It's your call. You okay?
I'm fine. Will you stay tonight? You can take the bed. I'll take the couch.
Yeah, you can take the bed. I love couches.
I don't know. I feel horrible. Those paintings were important. June put them in my care, and now they're just gone. I'm sorry, June. I'm sorry. I know there's something bigger, something more than the paintings. There has to be. There has to be.
Okay, it's on. Should we start?
You sure you're ready to dive back in after the other night?
Never been more ready. What today? Emails?
Yeah. I ordered you pancakes.
Not hungry. Thanks. So, email?
Okay. Well, let's see. We got a bunch. So we got a few emails from a Nigerian prince, a couple of guys asking if you're single, no pics, luckily, a lot of kudos and positive feedback, and people who just love anything fairies. Hey, you okay?
Yeah. I'm just tired. Sorry. What else?
There's this one email. It's long, kind of weird. It came through the podcast contact page.
Go for it.
The emailer is called Shadow Whisperer 77.
Sounds legit.
Here it goes. Dear Mrs. Verdell, I hope this message finds you well. My apologies for reaching out to you through a cryptic email address, but I assure you that the circumstances surrounding our connection require utmost discretion. I've been closely following your work on the mysterious fairy paintings and your podcast, and I couldn't help but notice the undeniable connection that seems to exist between us. You see, I've been experiencing the same dreams, the same uncanny presence, and it's becoming increasingly urgent for us to discuss this in person.
So he's asking me out.
He's not done. There's a lot more to this than meets the eye. Your dedication to investigating these unexplained phenomena has not gone unnoticed. Given the sensitive nature of our situation, I won't disclose too much in this email. We should meet face-to-face to discuss the dreams, the fairies, and the significance they hold. I believe that you hold a piece of a much larger puzzle, one that could change everything we know about our world. Time is of the essence. The answers we seek could be within our reach. Yours sincerely, a fellow dreamer. So, like I said, weird. Sounds like someone we stay clear of. Lucy?
Yeah, totally. Stay clear.
There are a lot of whack jobs out there, so, we just have to be safe.
Yeah.
There's this podcaster that I reached out to, and I think he might be able to shed a light on some of the shadier sides of this stuff. He's very balanced.
Balanced. You mean
more like you.
He's been doing this a while. He's seen all the angles. He has a popular podcast called Skeptoid.
Skeptoid. Really? Oh, perfect.
I'm Brian Dunning. I'm the host and producer of the Skeptoid podcast since 2006, looking at popular urban legends and popular pseudoscience and revealing the true science, the true history behind what's really going on.
Okay, let's jump right into it. Brian, I know that you spend your time kind of debunking things like this or kind of seeing the other side of popular stories that a lot of people want to believe. So I'm just curious about anything to do with fairies that seemed mildly believable to you.
I mean, I don't try to debunk. I mean, debunking is a process that I see as inherently negative. You know, you're taking away someone's cherished belief. Instead, I try to be positive. I try to find, what can we learn from this? What is the interesting thing about this story, the existence of this story, that's true? If I were to apply that example to fairies, the one story that I did decide to do a podcast about was the most famous one, the Cottingley fairies, where these two young girls, I think they were 10 and 16, they made these paper cutouts of dancing fairies, clipped them to some tree branches with hat pins, and took photographs. And a lot of people actually believed that these girls had come across fairies in the forest. The reason for that, and this is where I would say, here's the true part that's interesting, is because there was this popular belief in theosophy, which was kind of a blend of Christianity and sort of paganism. And the people who believed this were very much inclined to believe the fairy story. And among them was Sir Arthur Conan Doyle, the great author who wrote the Sherlock Holmes books. He believed in these pictures. And what it turned out to be the case is these girls were so horrified that they had fooled this eminent great man that they were quiet. They were silent. They didn't admit the hoax. But many, many, many years later, long after Sir Arthur Conan Doyle was dead, they did admit it. And so that's how we know the whole story of what actually happened. So it's when you look at the whole thing in context of the reality is where the story becomes interesting and where we can draw some fun lessons. So that's where I have left it as far as the parts about fairies that I'm willing to talk about on my show.
So I guess I'm curious. I personally have been experiencing some pretty real experiences related to whatever they may be. So I'm just curious if you have any information on fairies in less of a hoax, like a children's hoax way, and more of like in a real context.
Yeah, I mean, and that's actually how I got in touch with your podcast, how I found you, because that's something we have in common. We both had a little bit of a personal experience. Mine came a while back, a couple of years ago. I was speaking at a science communication conference in Japan, and while I was there, I visited the Japanese National Museum at Ueno Park, and I looked at samurai suits and samurai swords, and that was kind of stuck in my head. And so that night, I had this really long dream about samurais fighting and doing samurai things, but they were fairies. They looked like warriors, like big, scary, badass warriors, but they had big fairy wings. And I thought that was strange. But hada was this word that they kept using.
Wait, what? That's incredible.
When I woke up in the morning, I realized, oh, that was a cool dream, probably because I went to the museum. But this word hada, I said, no, but where do I hear that? Where did I get that from? I don't know if I got it at the museum or if it was something I heard somewhere else, but I started doing research to see, hey, is there a story here for a podcast episode? And that's when I came across this whole rabbit hole of all of these different places in pop culture around the world where hada has been used, and it's always been in conjunction with fairies of some kind.
Hada is something that has been coming up for me, certainly in my research. The more that I go down this rabbit hole, the more that I find, and the more that it seems like this very real place. I have so many questions as to why you think it showed up in your dream.
You know, I have done some episodes of my podcast on dream interpretation things, and it's largely BS, if not entirely BS. And so if I have a dream, I don't sit down and wonder, oh, why did I have that dream? You know, they're often triggered by something that you experienced that day. And since I'd been to the museum, that was kind of sufficient for me. So I didn't follow the thread of wondering if there was something special there.
You just think that it was because of what you had visually seen.
That is my interpretation. But I admit it's weird, though, because this word hada definitely came from the dream. And it definitely had all of this stuff attached to it that we've just talked about that was not from the National Museum in Ueno. Mm-hmm. The one thing I think of right away was the word hara is kind of an interesting word. It sounds like it's a Japanese word, but it also sounds like it might be a Spanish word. But the Spanish part of it was really interesting because there's a story that appears to come from the fascism days in Spain. I guess it's a folktale. There was a man who traveled to another land that was called Hada. It was a land populated by these warrior fairies. So I come across that and I'm going, okay, that's weird because that's the dream that I had when I was in Japan. So he kills one of the fairies.
Right.
He comes back to the regular world, and the fairies from their land, they somehow influence his wife to kill him in revenge for killing one of the fairies. And the people that they called themselves the Hadin from the land of Hada. All of a sudden now it refers to these sort of samurai mashup characters that are also fairies. And to this day, I still can't quite put together in my mind how this came to me in Japan, because I know this is something I had never looked into before.
I'm kind of stunned to hear this, especially from you.
Look, can we go can we pause the recording for a second? Because I should clarify something. When you're doing science communication, if you're going to talk about fairies, obviously fairies aren't real, okay? They're a fictional thing. You're not going to dissect a fairy in a science classroom. So when I'm doing a show on something, I talk instead about the real things around it. These things we're talking about, like the context of the legends, the history of the folklore, social science behind why some people believe this stuff. That's how you would put together an effective science communication show. But the stuff that we're getting into now, this weird stuff with dreams suddenly matching reality and stuff, and this, portal to another land called Hada, things like this. This is all stuff that lives outside of a structured science communication curriculum. So it's not something that I would talk about on my show. It doesn't fit into the boxes that we're comfortable with.
Totally understood on that. I wonder if there's anything that you can go into that kind of fits more within what you're comfortable talking about, the science of it, any research that you've done that's like cold, hard facts.
Yeah, for sure. Some of the other stuff that I came across when I was researching this word Hada was a patent application from the mid-1800s. Coincidentally, it was from Portland, Oregon, and I happen to live in Oregon. So I go, oh, that's kind of cool. I'll check that out. And it was a patent application for, let me just get the exact quote here, a device by which to breach the heavens and travel to distant Hada. So I don't know if this was something that was an actual device, or if this is something that came up with by someone writing some of these folk tales about Hada. But it was a legitimate patent application. There was an article about it in a prominent Portland newspaper that I came across. The inventor's name was Evelyn Mallory. I looked up in the current USPTO database. There is no such patent, which means that her patent application was denied. But the funny thing about this newspaper article was that it was really kind of insulting and disrespectful. It was making fun of this woman. They were calling her the fairy inventor, which I think if you're going to make up a funny term for someone, you could have gotten more creative than that.
No, absolutely.
When I was researching this, when I was looking into the Portland patent application, they put me in touch with this woman, and she left this phone message on my machine. I didn't follow up because the way she sounded in her message, she sounded like she was kind of on edge or maybe a little bit past it. And I decided it was probably not something I wanted to follow up with. So she left her contact information, which I'm happy to give you if you want. And although it's probably a wild goose chase, she has another one of those paintings, a black velvet one.
Ryan Denning and the Skeptoid podcast have been taking on all the most popular urban legends and revealing the true science, true history, and true lessons we can learn from each. Check it out at skeptoid.com. To learn more about the Black Velvet Fairies story world, go to emeraldanvil.com.